Hello and welcome to Strike Poster Set YouTube channel, or should I say welcome back if you are following the tutorial videos. So this will be the CAS sequence. It will follow up on to the CAS basics. It's still a theory. I will try to make it in multiple parts so it's not 1 hour long. And let's get started with the introduction. Cluster support is used by many nations as I probably have mentioned previously, so we need that standard format so everybody is on the same page. However, you can still modulate the sequence depending the course of events. It remains possible if you need to. Obviously you're not gonna do all the 12 steps for each attack. The learning goals for this brief will be to understand the chronology and the different possibilities within each phase of the CAS mission, and to include the previously learned basics to the execution template. So that will include the type of control and method of attack, obviously. So here's the overview, 12 steps, and you can already see 2 of them are the same. It's routing, safety. Obviously you want to route for the ingress and also for the egress. So here you can, same as for the CAS basics, you can pause the video if you need to. I will try not to read everything and make it boring, and add that little real facts or experience from my point of view. So the first step, routing, safety of flight. We're gonna move to that right away. So the first thing to do when you have no threats and you are in permissive environment is to authenticate. So the pilot knows he's talking to a friendly unit and not to an enemy who would have stolen a radio and intercepted the comms. So you authenticate first, and you can use many means, ramrod being the most common and widely known among DCS communities, I think. If you don't know what ramrod is, it's 10 letters, which are numbered from 0 to 9. So here's an example, Fight Boy Slim. And if you are challenged with Lima Mike, you have to answer India. That's the key to the challenge. So then you have a key for the ramrod, which will give you where the number 1 is positioned on the letters. So that can be useful for coding coordinates, for example. And you can use that also for the abort code. And we will talk about the abort code later. Then you have also the mean of AKAK or AMSL, which are a little bit less common and are more complicated to use. So we will not talk about that here. We will keep that for real life. So following the authentication, the aircrew should inform the JTAC about their own position and altitude, and that's very important for you pilots out there. You need to give your position and altitude as soon as the authentication is done, because otherwise we will have to pull it out from you and we'll lose time asking questions. So if you can do that, that's very good. And then we will deconflict you accordingly using PCM. So that means procedural control means that you have on the field that you created by yourself. Like it can be a reference point, an initial point that you made up, or keyhole, and you will use always a buffer of 1000 feet minimum, and I think most pilots know that from flying within wings and squadrons, that you have to keep a buffer within a flight for safety. So if you are showing up with a 2-ship, you will have a double stack, so you will have 2000 feet given to you for your stack, for your flight. And obviously non-permissive environment has to be called ASAP and will be done prior the authentication in that case. The next phase is the routing now. So there will be the deconfliction, and that's part of the routing. Obviously, if you have multiple sets already on station, you have to state it to the incoming aircraft. And the minimum instructions that will be given to you as a pilot will be to maintain current position and altitude if it fits the JTAC's will, or you will have to proceed and report established somewhere. so that can be proceed 10 nautical miles north of the echo point, or proceed alpha 10 in that case. We will talk about keyhole later, by the way. We'll do I think I will do a video about keyhole, because people have a lot of questions about keyhole all the time. So an example here of routing, it's deuce 21, proceed west, contact point 5 nautical miles, maintain below 1000 feet AGL, 1500 feet AGL. There is a ZSU 23-4 vicinity of compound 34, and you are the aircraft on station. Yeah. What I would do personally, I probably pulled this example from the Jetfire or something, but I would have stated the ZSU before, like, be advised there's a ZSU 23-4 vicinity of compound 34, so that ticks in the pilot's mind, okay, there's the ZSU. If he knows where compound 34 is, he will maybe even deconflict himself. That's the idea here, because pilots are not dumb, they know the buffers for all the threats, and you should know them as a pilot if you don't, and they will position the aircraft accordingly, obviously, otherwise the JTAC has to do it for them anyway. But that's, you know, that can be those seconds that will save your aircraft. And a little tip, when you are a JTAC, or even as a pilot, if you have no real guidance from the JTAC because maybe he's under pressure, he doesn't know what to do anymore, just go in his back. If you know where his approximate location is, just go a few clicks behind the front line, behind the forward line of own troops, what we call the float, so you know you're safe over there because you are not overflying enemy territory. So now moving on the check-in. The aircrew gives their air-to-ground loadout and capabilities, so don't state your air-to-air missiles. And I hear that from time to time, but it's no big deal, but it's just losing those precious seconds. And the two ships will be led by the flight lead, so the flight lead has to do it for the Dash 2. So flight lead will have to prepare the check-in with the Dash 2 ordnance as well. And there's this Nemo technique that I never use personally, but yeah, it exists, you know, if you can remember it. So those are all the items required: the mission number, the number and type of aircraft, call sign, position, playtime, ordnance, capabilities, and then the abort, which is mandatory. Can be in, as I said, with a ramrod code or in the clear, or some people will say getaway. That means you can say abort 3 times, it will work. And even if you from real life debriefing, I learned that if you mess up the abort code, if it's ramrod, if you give the wrong letter, the pilot will still abort for safety. So, which is kind of useless to use ramrod. That's why most of the time in real life we use in the clear. And I also recommend to read back the laser code for both aircraft. I mean, for both aircraft, for all the aircraft within the flight. That can be useful for later. If you have briefed the capabilities and loadouts prior going on the frequency, you can state as fragged in order to gain time. But the abort code will still be required as it's in here. So now we'll talk about the situation update. There's a Nemo technique. Actually, there are 2 of them, but I think this one fits the bill pretty well. So that's the one I use all the time. It's TT FACOR. The first T is concerning threats, so that's what the JTAC will give. On the 3rd step, just after the check-in is done, the threats, so general locations of ASA threats, of surface-to-air threats. You don't want to give grids, just give the general location on the battlefield. You just need to be concise and clear. Then you move on to the targets, so that will be the general enemy position. Again, avoid grids. Then friendly, if you have any marking, Grand Commander's intent and the general layout. Again, no grids. You will give all the positions from each platoons. If you are a JTAC team, you can give your position as well. You will, if you are embedded, you can embed yourself with a platoon or a company. Depends what you have. You just need to make sense of it and make it short and precise. Then you have RT. You have to state if it's hot or cold with the gun to target line, and max ordinate if you have one. And if you need to give the firing position, just give 6 digits and state friendly, friendly, friendly prior giving it. That's a requirement when you give friendly grids. So the pilot, usually that's for the pilot here. A little tip: if you have to write down grids for the enemy grids, you want to write down in red, and then if you have to write down friendly grids in blue, that would be this safety measure here with the color code, so you know when something is red it's enemy, when it's blue it's friendly, and you don't mess up when you input coordinates in your system. Now clearance, it's only useful when you have a FAK or multiple JTACs in the area. That will give the tasking for each JTACs or FAKs. For example, if I have a FAK, I would give him the stack, maybe the brief and stack. For example, I will say your brief, your stack, my mark, my control. We'll talk about that later with the FAK briefing. Then we have ordnance, which will only be about restrictions. If you have certain type of ordnance you want to use as low collateral damage, only guided munitions, for example. Then remarks, restrictions, it's all about the JTAC capabilities. If he has IR, NVGs, ground laser, TLE capability, target location error, all the hazards, and anything that wasn't mentioned before that you forgot, you can add it here. Also, you can talk about the terrain, what else, the weather. And now for the setup, no readback is needed. You just say copy setup. If you have any question, don't hesitate to ask for precisions. And as a JTAC, you have to avoid excessively long setup because it's boring and the pilot cannot write down everything anyway. You will have to abbreviate. So I will see you in the next video. We will talk about game plan and CAS brief, which will be a big part of the CAS sequence. So I see you there, and fly safe and have fun. See ya.